Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. How is everyone doing this evening? Happy and blessed Monday, and welcome to episode 575, I believe, of the Welcome to Asgard podcast, where tonight, 575, man oh man, can't believe it has been this long that we have been doing this live stream. We've been doing this show. We've had a lot of people stake it out the last several years, some new faces that have only been around for a little while, but it's always great to be with y'all on these Monday evenings. But anyway, as I was saying, tonight we're going to talk a bit about the box office because, of course, that's what we do here on the channel. And the numbers came in for this past weekend for The Conjuring Last Rites. And even though I have no desire to see the film, and it kind of troubles me a bit that a movie like that is what is bringing people out to the box office, to be perfectly frank, the fact still remains that it did insanely well. And with the actuals coming in for the weekend, it did even better than the initial projections. Got even closer to a $200 million global debut. Add to that the fact that I actually did not know going into the weekend and with my box office analysis that the film was even rated R. As you all know, I stay away from those movies in general, and I always just assume that they make those films PG-13, and so that way they can reach the most amount of people possible. But it was funny because I was overhearing some students talking today about how they couldn't get in, basically. And I thought to myself, well, that seems kind of odd because they should easily be able to get into a PG-13 movie. Turns out, it's actually because of the film's rating. So not only did it have an amazing opening weekend for a horror film, not only did it have an amazing opening weekend for a Conjuring film, it had an amazing opening weekend for a rated R film to boot. Everything all together, whatever metric you look at, the film is a massive success. Not to mention, as I did mention in my box office breakdown, this is one of the very few times, usually maybe once a year, maybe a couple times a year. It's honestly hard to kind of go back and think what films have actually done this, but it did something that very few films tend to do, which is it broke even in its opening weekend. It's very rare that you have a film that has a modest budget and is still able to reach out to as many people as a film like this seems to have been able to do. So, again, pretty insane stuff overall. And I saw someone mention it in the chat. We, of course, have a plethora of other things to talk about. There's been a lot of TV shows recently. I finally caught up with all of Season 2 of Wednesday. I saw the lovely ladies over at Force of Light. Shout out to them that they were reviewing that tonight. So I can give some thoughts on that show. Also, I've been keeping up, unfortunately, with shows like Alien Earth and even more so Peacemaker and even South Park. And I'll just say it's a rough time for shows right now. It's a very, very rough time for shows right now, especially South Park. South Park, honestly, it seems has gone off the deep end a little bit because some people, I think, freaked out a little bit too much when they had like their first episode and it was clear that they were going after the Orange Man. But every week since then, there's just been this consistent theme. And honestly, it's starting to come across, at least to me, as TDS. Because it's all they're focusing on. It's like the main focus of everything they're doing. And it's just very surprising and bewildering to me because every other president that we've had since their show has been on the air, I don't remember them ever spending this amount of time and especially these many episodes in a row dealing with the same political figure in this way. So I don't know how else to really read that, but all I can say is that it really hasn't been funny. And it's not because of who it's making fun of. It's just because it's coming across as just, plain old TDS. And we've just gotten so much of that over the years that it's never entertaining and it's just annoying to boot. So we'll talk about this and a plethora of other topics tonight. Saw someone, though, in the chat also mention that the articles are coming out saying that Superman is a huge box office hit that's making over like $100 million worth of profit. And apparently even within the article itself, it counteracts that very point that it's making, which is kind of hilarious. But we all know, right, because we've been covering this for a long time, that if we're just talking theatrical, like we're just looking at the theatrical release, so budgets, typical marketing costs, not even the numbers that are being put out there by some people as far as marketing spend, but just your total typical numbers. No, we're talking about like $40 million still in the red, let alone in the black. So interesting to say the very least. So let's go ahead and jump into the chat, though. because, of course, we love the chat here. Chat is, I think, one of the best in the business. Please make sure to smash that like button. Make sure you also smash the rumble button as well. We are all over the place this evening. And let's say hello to our people. We got Shorty Short, who was here first. She wanted everyone to know it. She is the Model Major General of the channel. And I did send you a message as well, Laura. Thank you so very much for sending me that fantastic gift, Godzilla-themed gift. And what's the funniest thing about it is it came with this nice Toho Studios or Toho Productions bag. Came with the two little mini Godzilla figures. Which I'm sure baby Thor, little Thor, is going to be very excited once he sees them. I've only held off on it because in the bag, that was it. I was like, wait a minute. I thought that there was a movie in here too, because I remember you had mentioned it. And then I look at the order slip, and sure enough, it was supposed to have a Shin Godzilla. The collector's edition of Shin Godzilla. And so I'm scratching my head like, this doesn't make any sense. So don't worry. I mentioned this in my comment as well, in my message, that I'm going to contact their customer service and say, hey, by the way, someone sent me this, and this is all that it had in it. It's very weird. It's almost as if, because I'm pretty sure that the two figures were just add-ons. So it's like, wait, you sent a little tote bag? Like, again, Toho Studios. It's like, Toho, what were you thinking? How do you do that? It didn't look like the package had been opened or anything like that. Honestly, I found it funny. I was just like, wait, of all the things you would think be the one thing that they would, leave in there. But thank you very much, Shorty Short. Thank you very much, Laura, for always being so kind and being always very generous sending that kind of stuff. So I appreciate that. I finally got to the P.O. box, by the way. So thank you. We got Kimberly G. Killian Shadowcat. What's going on, Kimberly G? Saying, second, darn it. That's all good, Kimberly G. Glad to have you here. We got Snortapoopas, Cuba, hello, humans, and other quitters. What's going on, Snortapoopas? He then went on to say, hello to you. We got Wendy Hunter. Wendy! What's up, Wendy? Saying, Odin and chat, hello. Hello, Wendy. Always glad to have you here. Thanatos Felicitas, saying, hello. Tagging at 725. Thanks for being here. Justin C. Evening all. Horror films just continue to keep being solid box office performers. They're the only genre, it seems. Because the superhero movies, those aren't making money. And we could argue saying, well, if you combine all of them together, they made over $1 billion at the domestic box office, at least. Sure, but they didn't make their budgets back either. So, yeah, they had a momentary, fling at the box office where they injected just a little bit of life back into it. But then they just, petered off, right? They just faded into existence, like fairy dust, Fugashi. And that's all they did. It was just there 1 second and then gone. But when you look at the horror films not only are having really monster openings, but then also are surprisingly, for horror films especially, holding well too. And that's just the thing, is that you think about how many less screens in general the horror films are in. I mean, these big budget, massive releases getting over 4,000 screens. I feel like normally when it comes to horror films, even the wider release ones, they tend to not be in as many. So The Conjuring Last Rites, for instance, was in 3,800 screens. And again, when you think about some of the biggest releases out there, they tend to be in over 4,000 screens. So they're able to do very, very well for what they have. Not to mention, in the case of films like Weapons, and also in the case of a film like Conjuring, it's a rated R horror film too. So you have a much smaller audience, right? A much more limited audience. I guess we could argue saying, well, I'm sure those kids that can't see the film are probably sneaking into the film in some way, or trying to at least. But it does limit you, right? It does make it more difficult for that large portion of the audience that used to be very reliant and reliable for some of those PG-13 horror films. And it's interesting. Absolutely is interesting. But yeah, they're killing it right now. JS Pena hanging out in the chat. What's going on, JS Pena? We got Forever Sci-Fi. Hail, all hail to you, JS Pena. Thank you for being here. Let's see. Kimberly G saying, how is everyone this Monday evening? We're doing well here. Kimberly G, thank you for asking. Thank you again for being here. Kelly Chow saying hello to everyone. Reminding everyone, don't cuss. We keep things here family friendly. Jeremy Zakowski, what's going on, Jeremy? Saying here, evening, Odin, everyone here. Variety has a report that Superman is already making bank, $125 million in profit. Not just that, Jeremy, as I mentioned before, theatrically has made bank. So they're insinuating you're not counting your VOD sales. You're not counting your alternate revenue streams. It's just theatrical. It's like, okay, well, just theatrical implies budget typical marketing, and the typical splits between domestic and international. And guess what? If you take that into account, nope, still $40 million in the red. It's insane. It's insane. I think it must have been written by the person who wrote that article, who's making that claim, must be of the same ilk of those that are continuously defending the film and trying to make it into something that it's not. Keely Chow saying, hello and hail, Odin. How are you, Thor, Freya, and Baby Sif doing? Also, how was your weekend? Weekend was fine. Had a bit of a rough weekend with little Thor, to be honest. He's going through some time, right? He's almost 5, so he's still little, but he's still trying to figure out what it means to be a big kid. He's not quite there yet, and so that has been a bit of a struggle. Had to have some big talks this weekend, so it's tough. Anyone who has younger kids or has had younger kids before, trying to get through to them at that age is very hard, if not impossible. You just basically can only get through just a little bit at a time, but apparently he had a great day at school today, so I'll take that as a win. We'll see if we're able to keep it up all week. Sahil99 tagged and just tagged. Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I assume that you'll follow that up later. Short waving. Hello. What's going on? Sahil99, there it is. Received some amazing news today. God is good. Well, I don't know what you're saying there, but hey, absolutely God is good. And congratulations on whatever the good news is. The Morak, what's going on, brother? Saying hello, Odin. Box office talk equals math. This is very true. This is very, very true. So don't you worry, though. We'll get there. We'll get there. By the way, Morak, thank you very much. I did go to the P.O. box, and so I did get your package as well. And so he sent me a new copy of Warcraft on Blu-ray. So that's actually a film I have not seen, so I'm actually interested in that one. And then one that, honestly, I'll probably just give away because I am not a fan of it, though I've not seen the extended cut of the film itself, is a Suicide Squad extended cut. Again, I wasn't a big fan of the film. I know there are some people that are fans out there, though, or at the very least would be interested in the extended cut of the film. This is the David Ayer film. And what's interesting is the extended cut then, I guess, not the Ayer cut? Is the Ayer cut just some magical thing out there that doesn't quite exist yet? I don't know. But Morak, thank you very much for sending me those. I appreciate it. And again, I'll probably give away the Suicide Squad extended cut at some point in the future. We got Mr. Roy. Hello. What's going on, Mr. Roy? Welcome back. Always glad to have my chosen of Valhalla here. JT is reborn. Hail to you. Thanks for being here. We got Wendy Hunter. Thank you very much for tagging, saying, I agree with you completely on South Park. I was shocked and stopped watching. Yeah, I mean, I'm still watching only because I'm wanting it to get good. There are so many things happening right now in our country, in the world, that they could do. But instead, they're just obsessed with ICE and Trump. And it's like, I'm sorry, why is every episode about the same thing? It really just doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. It's sad because they have always been known for being even-handed, right? They've always been known for going after everybody. And I think that was the initial defense, right? Because people were a little shocked at first, right? That first episode, they're like, wait a minute, they're kind of just going after it in a very direct way. And a lot of us were, again, saying, well, this is kind of what they do. They go after everybody. But when you do it now, 3 episodes in? By the way, I don't like this whole delayed release schedule where it's like, you're on 1 week, off the next week, especially since we already know how little time or how quickly they can actually make the show and how usually quickly they make the show, like little turnaround they have. So, I mean, if they're taking their time with it, that's fine, but I expect the stories to be better. I expect it to be funnier. But instead, they've just been hitting the same notes every single week over and over again. So, again, that first time, it's like, okay, I get it. Right? You go after everybody, that's fine. But now it's like, okay, now you're just going after the same people over and over again. To me, the funniest thing that's come out about it is the JD Vance version they've done. I think that to me gets me laughing every time. Just especially since someone did eventually tag that in a video with apparently like the inspiration for the character, because I don't remember seeing whatever the movie or show was where there's, I think, like a little person who actually is like does that kind of voice, and that was who they connected with. And I'm still like, oh, that's actually interesting, and that actually makes it even funnier that they did that with JD Vance. To me, that just, again, it just that's the kind of stuff you want to see. Everything else, it's like, okay, you're a bit too much on the nose, right? And comedy shouldn't be that on the nose. Let's see. Morak tagged said, Terminalist Dark Wolf on Prime has been great so far. Yeah, that's what I've been hearing. So I have that on my watch list for sure. We got Phil D hanging out. What's going on, Phil D? We got Michael Brigette. What's up, Michael? Thanks for tagging, saying, hey, Odin, saw a report today. The Last Witch Hunter with Vin Diesel and Michael Caine is getting a sequel. Did you ever see the first film? I did not. The trailer and the poster were more than enough for me to be like, no, I don't think so. Just not my cup of tea. But the fact that Michael Caine is going to come back, I don't know. I don't know if his character dies in the first film. And so if it's just like you're referencing the first movie having Michael Caine, interesting that he would be in a movie like that. Kimberly G, Odin's math can prove Superman numbers are bogus, indeed. And we'll look at the chart. We'll explain it slowly for hopefully the people at Variety to have a moment. Gary Banjo Sandwich Worthington, what's up, Mr. Banjo Sandwich, saying, having a birthday on Thursday. Hope you and yours are well. Hi, chatters. I saw you mention that. On Friday, so happy early birthday to the Banjo Sandwich himself. Thank you for always being here to support, especially since it's very late where you are. Johan Noxos. What's up, Johan? Saying, blessings, Odin. Good to see you. Good to see you too, Johan. Forever Sci-Fi, I have no problem with them making fun of the Orange Man. I do have a problem with their silence regarding the potato in chief we had previously. Yeah, seriously, they did nothing on him. There's so much material. And if the argument is, well, that's low-hanging fruit, I'm sorry, but what have they been doing going after the Orange Man? They've been going after all of the low-hanging fruit. And the thing with comedy is that there's usually like an element of truth to it. But what they're doing with this is they're just completely misreading the situation. Like, to me, I actually have a bigger issue with the stuff they're doing with ICE versus what they're doing with the Orange Man. Because I'm not as much of a, there are a lot of like sycophantic types out there, I think, that are a bit obsessed with certain political personalities out there. And let's just say, I think out of the people currently in political office, I'm on the Tom Massey side. Tom Massey is, I think, one of the best politicians out there right now. I think he's right on basically everything. Everything he says, every time he talks and explains things, you're just like, that makes sense to me. He's living it out in real life too, right? He's built his own house. He's homesteading, drinking raw milk, as he likes to remind everybody too. It's like, I would never go that far. That's just not me, but I respect it. It's like, to me, he's what authenticity is. And he's what I would hope all representatives would be like. All, right, including not just your House of Reps, but also your Senate, and also going all the way to the president. He is what I think the ideal should be. So that's just kind of just my own perspective there. But that all being said, right, I did find it interesting that they, again, are spending more time, it seems, going after ICE. And that I do have a problem with. Because then you're going after, people in service who are doing their job, doing the job that a lot of these states that they're in aren't doing. Like a lot of stuff that's happening is only happening because the states aren't doing their jobs. But anyway, we're not going to get too much into politics because we try to stay away from that. We like talking numbers and box office. Short saying, oh yeah, the Blu-ray cut for Shin doesn't come out until October. Okay, thank you. That probably is going to save me the embarrassment of the quick reply from them probably saying that very fact of, oh yeah, it wasn't in there because it hasn't come out yet. Thank you, Laura, for clarifying. I appreciate that. I remember you had mentioned that, but in my head, I guess I just didn't connect those things together. We got Kincaid and Rumsky hanging over the Green Machine on Rumble saying, I'm pretty sure I'm first on Rumble. Yeah, you typically are. Thank you for being here. Rob D saying, hello, Odin. Watch now. Hollywood will start making $250 million budgeted horror films and wonder why they aren't making money. Dude, seriously. But honestly, what's kind of interesting is that you would think that, because that's what Hollywood does, right? They find what's working and then they beat it into the ground. And to be fair, they've actually already been doing that a little bit with horror films. But the one thing you typically don't see is certain brands and certain studio titles, certain studio names cross over. What I mean by that is Disney is not just Disney, right? Disney owns a plethora of titles, right? They have 20th Century Studios, as it's now known as. They have a bunch of other smaller production companies, too, that are all under the Disney umbrella. And almost all studios do. And usually the way it works is that they have different studios who are focused on different kinds of projects. So 20th Century Spotlight, for instance, or rather, sorry, it actually got changed to Searchlight, right? Just Searchlight, not Fox Searchlight, but Searchlight. Searchlight is their independent wing. Independent. So normally the lower budget, giving people a chance, right, on the independent scene to have their films be produced and put in theaters and everything. So that's like what they focus on. So there are certain parts of their studio overall, like that they would be more able to make films that are horror related or thriller related, things like that. You're never going to see a Disney horror film, right? Because the Disney brand is kids, right? And that's why, for instance, when you have your superhero movies, it's not Disney, it's Marvel, right? It's Marvel Studios. And that again, that focal point really helps them to be able to diversify their audience. Now, they've been crapping on their audience and giving their audience a bunch of crap for years now. And so they've lost a lot of that goodwill, especially with the younger audiences, especially with that core demographic they've relied on so long, the families. But yeah, we've actually been getting a lot more of the horror films than you might even realize. I mean, keep in mind, it's those decisions that led to a film like Megan 2.0 coming out when it did, right? Because they saw that as an opportunity to try to, capture lightning in a bottle a second time, two years removed from the initial film, and it flopped in their faces, right? And there's been a bunch of other ones. Like, there's a lot of horror films that come out every single year. But because there are enough studios that know what they're doing, or at the very least are willing to take time and not spend a whole lot of money, they're able to more consistently put out more quality, more content at the very least, that consistently makes its money back. So, yeah, if they ever start to try to do like $250 million budgeted horror films, though, oh boy. Even the good horror films, it'd be stupid to spend that kind of money on. The beauty about the horror films that are being made today is that you don't need a lot of money. Johan Naxo saying, losing money is the new making money, at least according to the mainstream media. That is definitely the case, it seems. We got Gary Banjo Sandwich Worthington saying, saw more Clayface filming today on my way home from work in Liverpool. Has some very Gotham-like buildings. Interesting. Very interesting. He's also loving Dark Will. Very cool. Phil D. Hello, Odin. Hello to you, Phil. Appreciate you being here. Rob D saying, did you see the trailer for I Like Me, the John Candy documentary coming to Amazon Prime, I think in October? Yes, it is coming to Amazon Prime in October. And yeah, I shared it on social media. It looks great. We can have the varying opinions on the actors that they feature, but the one thing I can say is that for the most part, all of the actors featured are people I trust to give me a authentic view of who John Candy was, meaning that they were either friends or coworkers of his, people that I'm like, okay, yeah, I see why you're in this, right? I see why Steve Martin is in this. I see why Martin Short would be in it, or I think Dan Aykroyd maybe. Like, there was like a bunch of names in there. But every single one of them, I was like, this makes sense. There's a couple. I think you had Tom Hanks at one point too, but you're like, again, for the kind of personality that John Candy was, again, that makes sense to me too. But yeah, it actually looks really good. I'm actually very excited for that because I love John Candy. I think he one of the greatest comedic actors of all time. Died way too young, and it's looking like it's going to be very respectful of him. So it seems like it's going to be one of the better documentaries out there. So here's hoping, right? Here's hoping. Kagan Rumsky, is Shin your favorite version of Godzilla? No, I think Godzilla -1 is definitely like my more recent of the favorites. I really like the old school ones though, because I just find them so entertaining. The one that I can watch with my son at the very least, and he finds it funny every time, or at least entertaining every time, is the is Godzilla versus Megalon, because you deal with Seatopia and you have the really bad English dub, which is hilarious. But I think he likes Jet Jaguar a lot. It's so funny because he loves singing Jet Jaguar, but because Jet Jaguar is sung in Japanese, the way he sings it is the way that they sing it. So it's like, Jet Jaguar. So it says a Jet Jaguar, it's Jet Jaguar. It's so funny to hear him say it. Arnold, hey, do you think it was wise for Warner Brothers to delay Mortal Kombat 2 until 2026? Honestly, didn't you ask me this last week? I feel like someone's asked me this before. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. If anything, it means that it's not ready and they're going to spend more money. I did not like the last Mortal Kombat they put out there. I thought it was very bad. I thought it was not worth seeing even the first time, let alone the second time. I know that there were fans of it, and some of them might even be in this chat, but I did not like it. Not a fan. Xvoot, what's going on, Xvoot? Do you think Black Phone 2 will repeat the success of the first? The first did 9 times its budget worldwide. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. The first trailer is intriguing at least. The film has to be good, though. That's kind of what Megan 2.0 showed. You can have a success like a first movie like Megan did, right? Doing not just great numbers. It did great numbers because it came out in January. And I always say, right, January is the place where films go to die, and yet somehow Megan did very well for a film that came out at that time. So it made sense for them to greenlight a sequel and to even greenlight it very quickly, but clearly they misread their audience and did not give the audience a movie that they actually wanted to see. A big part of why that first film worked too was because there was this viral marketing campaign that really worked. They clearly didn't do that this time, and they were probably trying to force it a bit too much. Black Phone 2 is going to have to really try to capture that same magic the first film had, and part of it is just by being a very, very good film. Because I also thought, I mean, again, I typically stay away from the horror type movies, but because that one had a bit more of a thriller dynamic than a horror, up until like towards the very end at least, I think it has some potential to do that again. Right now, it seems the trailers at least are indicating that. Let's see. Wendy Hunter saying, I remember working at Regal Cinemas back in the day in September when the B-level horror movies would start to release. Did you have a same experience when working at AMC? Yes, I do. I do remember. And it was always funny because they always had about the same audience. Just that very consistent level audience. Honestly, it was some of the worst weekends, Wendy. And maybe you have this experience too. Some of the worst weekends were when the really bad PG-13 horror films would come out, usually around September, because they were always PG-13 and they would always have show times right at the cutoff of when the curfew would go into effect. So at most theaters in many states, there are curfews where if you're 16 or younger, you will not be able to go without having a parent or guardian with you. And there's some crazy stories I have. So I'll actually mention one here. I may have mentioned some of these before. I honestly don't remember. But there was a PG-13 horror film. It was the last one that the kids could get into at like 8 o'clock or 7:30. Like I think the cutoff was 8. I think after 8, that's when the curfew set in. So you had to get in at a certain time. Otherwise, you would have to have had an adult with you. And so all of a sudden, we start getting people complaining because apparently there's a lot of rowdiness in this one theater. And I think I was customer service at the time. I don't think I had been promoted to a supervisor yet. But I remember we had to go in there. And some of the managers and supervisors had to go in and try to see what was going on. Basically, it was so bad that there were like kids hooping and hollering. They were running up and down the aisles. They were like jumping over seats. It was such a madhouse in there that they couldn't even go in to like get things calmed down. So we actually had to stop the movie and turn the house lights on. So you know when you walk into a theater and the lights are on, you can see? Those aren't actually the house lights. Those are actually like the mood lighting. Right? It's the mood lighting that goes up and down. There's like this switch that is very hard to get to. You have to have like a specific kind of like this weird like key thing where you have to flip it up and it turns like the very bright house lights in the theater on. We only turn those on usually if we're like doing some repairs or if the cleaning, not us, but the cleaning crew at night, because there's a separate company that does like a full clean of the theater every night, and they would turn those lights on. So it was so bad we had to turn the overhead lights on. And then we set up barricades, like the tents of barriers. And we basically were like, everyone, no matter who you are, has to leave the theater. So we set up these tents of barriers and just basically like a horde of cattle were just like, get on out, get out of here. And we kicked everybody out. And it was like a full packed theater too. And there were, of course, some adults in there, the ones that hadn't left yet, because there were at least some that were wise enough to, as soon as things got crazy, were like, all right, I need to switch my movie because things are crazy in here and this is ridiculous, right? But there were some adults that stayed. And I was like, why? How in the world could you stay in a movie for like even 30 minutes with that kind of stuff going on? And so we had to deal with some of them complaining. And eventually, I think we were able to give some of them like some passes. But a lot of those kids did not get refunds, did not get passes. They just got kicked out. So it's like, man, they just wasted their parents' hard-earned money to make fools of themselves at a movie theater and get kicked out. It was one of the wildest nights ever. Like, I was just like, I can't believe it. I'd never seen something like that before. But again, I did work at a theater in New Orleans, and it was a lot more common for stuff like that, unfortunately, to happen. The other time that I'll mention, because since I'm already kind of on this rant, this is when I was working at the box office. And there was a woman. Well, first there's like 2 buses that pull up. Buses at night. So not a school trip, but just buses. And all these kids start filing off, all teenagers. And then this one woman comes up and tries to buy all these tickets. And it's not just she's buying them all herself. She's like coming up with like each of them and like buying them individually. And I don't know what happened, if the manager on duty that night or whoever was handling it just didn't understand it. But we pretty quickly had to shut that down because eventually they were all just waiting in the lobby. And it was a similar situation where it was like they were like cutting their lines, and eventually we had to like kick them out because it was that bad. But yes, oh man, those are my least favorite releases, the PG-13 horror films, because the kids are crazy. And they always had these showtimes that came up right up against curfew, and that was the film that they would always go to. And the kids also, we had to put policies in place where if kids were walking around, because that's the thing, they would go and buy a ticket to a movie, but then they wouldn't watch the movie. They would just walk around the whole night. And so at some point, we were like, no. This is not daycare. This is not go wherever you want. Like, you bought a ticket to a movie. You need to be in that theater watching that movie. And if you're not going to be there, you need to get out. So we actually ended up having to have certain nights where we had to have like supervisors and managers roaming the halls, kicking kids out just because they weren't watching their movies. Again, wasting their parents' money. We'd be like, no, y'all don't get a refund because y'all are causing havoc. Y'all are going into these other theaters and thinking they can just do whatever the heck you want. It's like, just because you bought a ticket doesn't mean that you can do anything you want. Anyway, yes, thank you. Yeah, Colin Hanks. I remember his name being mentioned as the director. Saying Colin Hanks is the director of I Like Me, so I can understand why he interviewed his dad. Again, that makes sense too. Arnold, hey, what are your thoughts on what are your thoughts that we already have a sequel for Superman and will release sooner than the Batman 2 or even Shang-Chi sequel? I mean, honestly, everything coming out of James Gunn, I think should not be trusted. He's proven himself to be a liar. He's proven himself to be willing to say whatever suits him at the time. So we'll wait and see whether or not that actually happens or not. But it wouldn't surprise me either, because James Gunn is a hot mess. Because the other thing too, I believe in that same release was it was not going to be a direct sequel to the James Gunn Superman. And the argument I hear, I think it's pretty weak, is, oh well, because it's not gonna be a follow up to that movie. It's gonna be a follow up to Supergirl. It's like, but it's still technically gonna be a follow up, because if it's a Supergirl movie, it's gonna be about Supergirl. It's not gonna be about Superman, right? So it would still be theoretically picking up after the events of Superman. Anyway, that's semantics. That's something that nerds can debate over. But the fact that he's also like going out of his way to make other claims about the film and what kind of story it's going to be, it's a mess. It just continues to be another piece of evidence to suggest James Gunn was the worst person to choose to run the DCU. He's not getting things back on track, and things are just going to get worse. Let's see here. And also, if that's how are they justifying a sequel? Because as I said now several times, I've been saying this almost every week, the movie Superman is not making money theatrically. All right, it is verifiably a flop. That being said, VOD sales, Blu-ray 4K sales, I think there's enough there for the film to definitely get money back and to be a little profitable. But when you're dealing with 40 million negative theatrical, that's a bad place to start for any movie. And so even if you're able to make that money up and maybe even make it up quite a bit, you're still going to take, let's say you make $100 million in profits on VOD. That's still then, you got to knock off 40 because that's what you still needed to make back theatrically. So it's cutting into those profits nonetheless. And so my guess is that they're probably like, okay, we need to try to still, I guess, strike while the iron's still hot. There's clearly an audience out there for this movie, but maybe we need to speed this thing up so that way it doesn't get caught in production for a long enough time where the budget gets skyrocketed out of control. Maybe that'd be my guess. Hard to say. Arnold Hay saying, do you see Wicked 2 being $1 billion hit? I don't. The first film did very well down the stretch, right? Didn't have the biggest of opening weekends, but clearly had an audience that kept showing up for it. But I feel like the audience is already set for the sequel. I don't think the audience is going to grow from there. Jeremy Zakowski, November 3rd, Toho is doing a Godzilla Fest on YouTube and will feature a tokusatsu short of using the Godzilla 2000 suit. Something for you and Baby Thor to watch. Ooh, interesting. Phil D, thank you for being here again. If you have a comment or question you want read aloud, just put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment, @Odin. Let me know you're trying to get my attention. Of course, if you are a member here on the channel, then you will have your comments read whether you tag me or not. Of course, if you tag other people, I'll assume you're talking to someone else. But anyway, let's go ahead and dump into, since we've gone through a lot of those comments, let those comments build back up again. It's about 8:05, so let's dive into some box office talk. And as you all know, if we're going to talk box office, there's only one thing to do.
Time to see a real mathematician at work.
That's right. We got to dig into the math and time to see a real mathematician at work. So this past weekend saw some insane numbers for this rated R horror film, The Conjuring: Last Rites. As I've mentioned, I am not a Conjuring person. That's just, I stay away from anything and everything demonic if I can help it. And The Conjuring, by its very name, is very much indicative of that. Now, there's a whole Conjuring verse, right? There's the Nun movies, there's the Annabelle movies too, and all of them tend to do pretty well, right? The Conjuring are clearly the mainline movies. We can almost say that the Annabelle and the Nun films are kind of like the B tier, the B-level films that are able to bring some of those same people over. But clearly The Conjuring is kind of the bread and butter. So domestically, this past weekend, it actually ended up making around $84 million. But what's interesting is that it was around 187, I think, $million this past weekend. Well, the updates finally came in for domestic and international, and that bumped all the way up to $194 million in its debut. So these are some insane numbers here, just for some perspective, okay? The budget that's being reported is $55 million, right? That's the reported budget. And for films like this, that sounds pretty believable because they're very consistent, right? Horror films are consistently underneath $60 million. And usually they are looking at a break-even point, probably around 3 times their budget. So just looking at that number alone on thenumbers.com, you can already see it's already made 3.5 times its budget back. You add to that it's got a big number both domestically and internationally. And here's the other thing too. Something that honestly, I did not realize this until this exact moment. Based off of the numbers in front of us, and let me just double check real quick to see about release dates, because this could actually be even bigger than one might realize, okay? So it looked like it has a pretty consistent opening weekend, right? The earliest it ever got was Finland, but Finland is barely a mark on the map there, okay? Listen to this, guys. I don't know if y'all realize this too. I typically don't watch other YouTubers in the box office space because I usually don't have time to watch really much of anything these days. But $110 million international. That means The Conjuring: Last Rites had a bigger opening weekend internationally than Superman. James Gunn's Superman had a bigger international release than Fantastic Four. And you could then say and go down the line of every single superhero movie that came out this year. Conjuring had a bigger opening weekend internationally than some of the biggest titles to come out this year, including James Gunn's Superman, which again opened to $95 million, I believe. Oh boy. It not only speaks to the strength of Conjuring, because man, this is a rated R horror film. This is a rated R horror film, guys. And again, let's keep me honest here. Let's just look this up real quick. Just double check. It says Last Rites. This is the AI speaking. But let's see. Wikipedia. 2025 horror film. Where is it? Where is it? Where is she? Rachel. Where's the rating? Come on, guys. Where's the rating? This is why we keep it live, though. Keeps me honest. R rating. Let's see. Conjuring Last Rites has been rated R. There it is, right there. Conjuring's been rated R. So a rated R horror film, guys, has beaten PG-13 level massive MCU film, massive DCU film. Please explain to me again how Marvel's in a fine state. And also, if you're one of the apologists out there for Superman, please tell me how Superman had an amazing box office. How its opening weekend was phenomenal. Please try to make that argument now. It was beaten by The Conjuring, Last Rites. And again, this is not a knock against The Conjuring, but the fact is, a rated R horror film is already limited in its audience scope. And yet, this is telling us that the opening weekend audience, at least for the opening weekend, and again, we'll see how down the stretch this film does. I don't see this film doing $600 million, right? Now, on paper, it should, right? On average, most films tend to make 3 times their entire global box office in their opening weekend. If this plays out, if this film and this opening weekend represents 30%, 33% of its box office, it would leg out to $600 million. I don't think that's going to happen, right? Horror films also tend to have very similar audience, or at the very least, audience reactions as superhero films do, right? Superhero films, remember, have usually big opening weekends, massive drops. Horror films tend to do the same thing too, right? Because people want to see the movie right away. They don't want any spoilers on what's going to happen. They want to be thrilled. They want to be excited. And that's typically what happens, right? So I do suspect we're going to have a pretty big, fall next weekend, both domestically and internationally. But still, the fact that we're still in a world where The Conjuring has a better opening weekend internationally than all those movies, and maybe even one of the best international openings of this year, is quite insane. Quite insane indeed. Now, if we go over to the franchise, just for some perspective here. Now, these are unadjusted numbers, okay? We go back to 2013's first Conjuring film, $20 million budget, so they've obviously increased quite a bit since then. Now, again, that number represents a larger budget overall, right? But they were able to keep all of their budgets under $60 million, right? Probably when you adjust for inflation, we're looking at each of the films costing, for the Conjuring films at the very least, around, a little under $60 million or so, just like this current film is. First film, though, legged out to $316 million globally. Then they did their spin-off, Annabelle, the year after, for, look at this, 6.5. This is the other massive thing, too. Not only did The Conjuring set up this massive world, but then they were able to launch these much smaller, like, in comparison, almost micro-budget comparisons, right? And still able to do gangbusters, right? So $316 million for the first Conjuring film. Annabelle, the spinoff, they spent nothing on, $256 million. Conjuring 2, they're able to build that audience a little bit with $321 million, spent a little bit more on that, so still massive profits. Annabelle Creation, $306 million, so they spend twice as much on that film and make more, building that audience. Then they have the spinoff The Nun the year after. This is crazy. Look at this. They released a movie almost every year. This is something that Star Wars wish it could have done. This is what Disney Star Wars had wanted to do. Remember that they were like, oh yeah, we're going to have our mainline Star Wars films, and then we're going to have these spin-offs, and we're going to release something every year. Imagine if they had actually pulled it off. Imagine if they had actually given fans something that they wanted and kept their budgets in check. They might have actually been able to do something similar, but no. No. The Conjuring can do it. The Conjuring can build its own multiverse and be very successful at it, in fact. Not so much the MCU, or rather, not so much Star Wars. MCU, of course, kind of falling by the wayside, too. So their next spinoff, The Nun, $366 million. So they're building their audience even with their spinoffs. You see a drop here in 2019 with the Curse of La Llorona. This is clearly their most unsuccessful project. And I remember the trailer for that one, but I forget exactly how it was even connected to the universe. I'm assuming that this may have been connected. Was this a part of The Nun? It says, no, The Weeping Woman. Okay, gotcha. So there must have been some character or something established in that universe of a Weeping Woman. She Wants Your Children. That's not creepy at all. Again, I stay away from those films. But even that movie, they spent only $9 million on and then made $123 million. So even though by comparison, it's nothing, that's still a massive return on your investment to an insane degree. What's also interesting is that if you notice the times that they spin off things, they tend to be much more conservative with their budget, right? Annabelle, $6.5 million was the first film. Then they bumped it up to 15. The Nun, they started off at 22 million and then bumped up to 38 million for the second one, right? And then The Curse of La Llorona, only $9 million, but still they made 123. Then you have Annabelle Comes Home, $231 million. Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. This was COVID. This was COVID affected. Still made $206 million. So again, nothing close to the success of their previous movies, but when you take into account what it is, that's impressive. Then you get The Nun 2, $269 million. And now already after one weekend, it's at $194 million for The Conjuring Last Rites. So you know what? Even though I do suspect you'll have a pretty massive drop-off second weekend, $400 million minimum. $400 million minimum. And where do I get that from? Just compare that opening weekend to every other film. The Nun, maybe adjusted for inflation, get you another 10, 15 million. Still not at 84 million. So this is the best opening weekend. And again, I'd want to adjust for inflation just to be fair, right? I'd have to get an official chart on that. I was trying to get one up working before, but the numbers.com was just not working with it. But yeah, $400 million minimum globally is where right now The Conjuring Last Rites seems to be tracking. And I would say probably range-wise, $400 to $600 million. So you actually have a universe now where The Conjuring Last Rites will probably make more than Captain America Brave New World, probably pretty easily. Probably can easily make more than Thunderbolts. And I don't think it's going to reach the heights of Superman, but the fact that it might even be in the discussion because of this opening weekend and because of its international opening weekend is still insane. So again, kudos to everyone behind the project, right? The Warner Brothers, having the film, massive budgets for them. Massive profit margins for them. And I mentioned this in the video. It's already broken even. That's such a rare thing. Again, I don't think a film this year until now has broken even its opening weekend. If it has, I don't remember it. Again, it's very rare when it does happen. But it's already made $7.7 million in net profits, and it's only been out for 4 days. Insane. Since I do already have my charts up, I'll just dispel the nonsense coming out of that Variety article. So the Variety article that said James Gunn Superman is already making $120 million in profit theatrically. It does specify theatrical. If we look at our chart here, because we love charts here on OMB Reviews, all right, we've got some numbers to look at. So first, the budget. Now, the budget that the trades have put out there, again, the budgets that the trades have put out there is $225 million. Okay? Now, you all know I don't buy that. When they put on a tax form $300+ million, and you still include tax incentives, and maybe they overestimated their spending, I'm sorry, 225, that's ridiculous. Okay? 255 minimum is what seems to be, and again, I think that's being more than fair. But even for the sake of argument, 225 is what I have in my chart, right? That 337.5 million total spend, that's if it has a typical average marketing spend. Now, we know that they spent a lot more on this film. We also know they had a lot of deals too, right? And so that's why it's always harder to quantify exactly how much of that is net spend, how much of that is gains. So I just said, okay, you know what? Let's just not even go there, right? Let's just have your typical marketing spend. Let's just look at that. And if you take that into account, based off its opening weekend, mind you, the film actually should have broken even. Even my charting was indicating, based off of its opening weekend and its second weekend, it should have made between $12 and $152 million in net profit. And yet that's just not where we are right now, because this film tanked overseas. Because keep in mind, my charting is assuming a typical drop, right? A typical week 2 drop, a typical week 3 drop, typical holds domestic and international. But this film dropped like a rock internationally. It was a catastrophe internationally. And the only number on this chart that I have not updated because of the way that the the numbers has been working recently, which is not very well, is the China number. But it has not updated since, so 8.9 million is still accurate. So remembering, and this is where we get into it, right? It's made $353 million domestically. Studios get 55% of that. It's made $251 million internationally. Studios get 40% of that. And then it made $8.9 million in China. Studios only get 25 million, or rather 25% of that. So you take into account its spend. You take into account 55%, 40%. And you subtract the marketing, or rather you subtract the total spend, right? That estimated total spend, it's still at $40 million. Net losses. So where they get $125 million, I honestly have no idea. You have to do some very clever accounting to get to that point. If they're only talking theatrically, again, mathematically, it's not really within the realm of possibility. Again, you'd have to be making a lot of assumptions there. If we're just talking theatrically, I'm more than willing to say, hey, it's already made profit on VOD and Blu-ray, 4K pre-sales, etc. Okay, I could accept that. Those are harder numbers to track. Those are harder numbers to get because they typically don't get full reports on those numbers there. But that's not what the article said. The article said already $125 million in net profits. Where it gets that from, I honestly have no idea. Unless, of course, they are using some older metric. But even that older metric of a 2.5 multiplier to break even would still not get you to $125 million in net profit. So anyway, we've got some amazing stuff going on right now for the horror franchises, right? The horror genre in general is just dominating. The fact that this opening weekend internationally bested films like Superman and its opening weekend and the Marvel films and all of their opening weekends is insane. And not just a horror film, a rated R horror film. And that's a very important factor. All right, let's jump back into the chat, everybody. We got Steven at 758 saying, I just got out of one of my classes at college. Oh boy, wait a minute. I feel like there's like a bingo game, or I don't want to say drinking game because as you all know, I don't drink. But there has to be some kind of game we can play, because how many times are we going to have Steven come in with a bunch of questions, but also mention that he's at college. All right, so he got out of one of my classes at college that I mentioned I went to college. Excited to make it to your live stream. I feel horror movies are safe bet to make money back in box office. Conjuring, for example. Agreed, Steven. And I'm glad. I hope you had a good class, man. Hope you had a good class. Glad that you were able to come on and join us. Q2 Cast TV, what's going on? We got Justin C. tagging to say, are you planning to see The Long Walk? Not sure if it's more of a horror film or dark thriller. It looks more of a thriller film, so maybe. Really depends on whether it's FNT homework or not, because it's not something that I really want to see. Motherbrigette saying, oh, did you see the official release date and cast announcement for the new Street Fighter film? It was a fun callback to the arcade game with the character select screen. No, I didn't see that. That sounds like fun, though. Keely Chow leaving early again. All right, we've got the Steven questions coming in. Your thoughts on Tobey Maguire being seen near where Doomsday is being filmed at? Cool. This is not really... It wouldn't surprise me if he's in the film. It wouldn't surprise me if Andrew Garfield's in the film either. Because that movie is going to be the most bloated mess probably ever created. That's why, people ask, do I think that the MCU films, specifically the Doomsday ones, are going to make money? I think those are films that are probably going to easily make $1 billion globally. The issue is that they're also going to be spending probably at least $500 million on each of those movies' budgets. And I've mentioned this several times before. They've already put out there the amount of money that they're spending on the directors, Robert Downey Jr., or they've indicated what they're spending on one of those. And then the other said, oh, I'm getting X amount more. I think it was like they mentioned how much the directors are being paid. And then Robert Downey Jr. said something about being paid more than that, or so. I don't know. One of those two is the one. But the fact is that they're spending just between the directors and Robert Downey Jr. like $150 million, I think, per movie. So that's just those two. That's not including the rest of the cast. And there's 40 plus actors, all of varying degrees of fame. But you have some pretty big names in there still. And even if they've got small screen time, they're probably still going to ask for a fair penny. And honestly, if their agents were smart, they would say, let's milk Disney for all it's got. Why not? They seem like they're willing to spend and waste countless millions of dollars on these projects. So I would not be surprised if by the end of it, when they're actually making the movie, spending money, that they end up spending $1 billion on both movies total. So $500 million per movie. If that happens, guess what? You need to make $1.5 billion just to break even. So even though I could see the films easily making $1 billion, even if it did, it would still be a massive flop. Even if it hit 1.5 billion, it would still barely be breaking even. Because remember, you don't get 100% back. And if those numbers are skewed and you have a lot more coming internationally than domestically, then that increases your break-even point. Yeah, it's going to be bad. Steven, your thoughts on IGN and other articles saying Superman made 125 million in profit? Well, most of them are like owned by the same company, and the ones that aren't owned by the same company are referencing articles by sites that are owned by the same company. So again, I take it with a massive grain of salt and also a massive grain of BS because we know better. Xvoot saying, did you like the Now You See Me movies? How do you think the third installment will perform compared to its predecessors? The first film, 4.5x budget worldwide. Second film, 3.x times budget worldwide. It's going to do worse. I liked the first movie, did not see the second film, had no interest in the second film. It was not a film that needed to be turned into a franchise. The first one was fun. It was fine. Nothing's too special. It's kind of like a one and done for me. It's like I never had to watch it again. But it was fun when I was watching it. Then they made a sequel and I thought to myself, what? What are you talking about? That's insane. Why would you do that? And if memory serves me, I want to say like, wasn't the budget high or there was something going on with that? Let me see if I can pull that up. Fortunately, because the numbers is just slow as molasses, I have to go to the enemy. I have to go to Box Office Mojo because they are faster. If anything, they are faster. They are easier to navigate in that way. Yeah, 3 years later, they released Now You See Me Don't. So yeah, the first film made $351 million off of a $75 million budget. The second film, they made $334 million, so they made less money. That's why it's weird to see them actually release a third film, because their second film actually did worse than their first. And while they did not include a budget on the Box Office Mojo page, yeah, they did spend more. So according to at least some articles over on Wikipedia, I'm looking at the sources, it's looking like they spent between $90 and $120 million. So they might have made their money back. Because on average, that would be about $100 million worth of budget. That means you need to make around $300 million to break even. They made $334, but the majority... Oh, wow. Okay, wait a minute. Just for perspective. In fact, let me go ahead and let's enhance that, and then let's y'all see what this is, okay? So the question is about Now You See Me. Look at this stuff. This is what I'm talking about, okay? So $65 million domestic was only 19.4% of its total box office. I don't know what the heck happened. How in the world does this film make $269 million internationally? 80% of its box office was made internationally. Like, even the first film, you had like a 60-40 split. In this case, closer to a 70-30 split, which is odd. It's very weird to see that, but at least it makes some sense. But oh my gosh, like an 80-20 split international. That's insane. But it still did worse. But this is what I was talking. So even though the number here, right, 269 is a lot larger than 234, 55% of this is a heck of a lot more than 55% of that, right? So it made about almost half of the domestic. And that's a huge cut in overall revenue. Its domestic opening also went from 29 to 22. So the fact that they made a third film is very weird. My guess is, just like it typically is when films like this happen and there are, sequels, or in this case, a trilogy of coming out of it, is that there must have been something on VOD, there must have been something on physical media that allowed for them to somehow justify to investors that it was worth putting money into it. Because I actually don't know offhand whether that would actually be, this predates my chart, so I can't reference that, but there's a question mark as far as whether it was theatrically profitable because of how little money it made domestically. In fact, let's see where it made a huge chunk of the money. It made... Wait a minute. Oh, it gets deeper, guys. Okay, now I'm actually going to say I think this film flopped. It made $97 million in China. What the heck? Now, I think this was at the peak of when Hollywood films were in China and they were making this. Dude, all right, here's conspiracy time, guys. Do you think that China was faking their box office numbers to make Hollywood think films were more successful there than they actually were? All just to set them up for failure down the line? Again, that's conspiracy. I don't really believe it, but you're kind of like, wait a minute. How in the world do we go from Now You See Me 2 made $97 million, but James Gunn's Superman only made $8.9 million? Excuse me. Something's not quite right here. Let's see. The original film, and this is after the original film. Okay, I was going to say it didn't get released in China. But it only made $22.9 million in China, the first film. $97 billion. So yeah, this is how, again, we know even more so. So they only get 25%. So of the $97 million, let's round it up to 100. They got $25 million from that. They got $25 million. Oh man. Did not see us going down the Now You See Me rabbit hole, but now that I have no idea how they're justifying making a third film. Especially since China's not showing up this time, guys. So if you went from 22 million in China to 97 to 100 million in China for Now You See Me 3, I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and say maybe it still does, somehow it still does better than James Gunn's Superman. And let's say it does 15. It's not going to get anywhere close, guys. Gosh. So yeah, 2.5. I'll just throw that number out there. I have no confidence in it. I'm just throwing a number out there, but why not? 2.5. Justin C. Tata say, did the craziness at your AMC in New Orleans usually happen around Mardi Gras? No, as I said, it was usually during the fall when the horror films, the PG-13 horror films started to come out. Because Mardi Gras, that wouldn't have been until February or March. Steven, how did it go for your first week of fantasy football? Yeah, I mentioned this in previous streams that I do a fantasy league with my family. I have a little nephew that I can't believe that he's 11 now. It's insane. But he's a huge fan of football and really wanted to start a fantasy football team 4 years ago. And so he really wanted to do one with his family, with his uncles. So all of us do it, right? Me and my two brothers do it, my sister and his mom. And then the spouses of us all, we all play together. We have a nice little league. And then my parents actually play too, which is hilarious. My mom actually won last year. So she's got a title to defend this year. I won, though. I won my first game, my first fantasy game. All my players have already played, and so it's already 100% victory for me. And I had the best overall score for the weekend, too, out of all the teams. So good start. But usually I tend to do pretty well. Most weeks. Every now and then, my record I've always had a winning record over the 4 years that we played. I won the first year. And anyway, Rob D, I thought for a second you were going to tell us that there was a time a woman gave birth in your movie theater. Again, in comparison, that wouldn't be as crazy, I think. Geek Truth 64 at 8:03. What's up, Geek Truth? I'm 30 minutes behind in the chat. That's just how it goes here. Saying it's Odin. Sorry if you like. That is always the first comment I need to give when I drop it. Hey, no problem, man. For those that maybe don't understand, because there's some people that are new, maybe never watched me when Fun fact, I used to have videos on Geeks and Gamers, the main Geeks and Gamers channel. This was a long time ago at this point, a few years ago, when the channel was a little bit different, right? It's more focused on live streaming now. Every now and then, Jeremy will get inspired to start doing videos more consistently. So it's always like, it's like that inside joke of like, okay, yeah, we'll see how long this lasts this time, Jeremy. But there was a time when he had a bunch of different people making content for the channel. And so I had a consistent spot on there doing my box office breakdown for Geeks and Gamers every Sunday. And so that was my opening over there was, what's up, Geeks and Gamers? It's Odin. And it stuck. It was always funny to read the comments because there were some people who hated it and were like, Odin again. He keeps doing this, blah. And then there were others who were like, yeah, man. Box office math. Jeremy Zakowski. Odin, you silly goose. It's not the Superman sequel. It's the Justice Gang sequel. You're right. You're right, Jeremy Zakowski. My bad. You're correct. Just Cho 96. Did they use the Steiner math for that? They had to have. Wendy Hunter. Odin math. That's the stuff, says King Kane Rumsky. He loves the math. Let's see. Wendy Hunter saying, that is crazy that it had the biggest opening weekend. Yeah, seriously. It's insane. How well that film did. It is insane. Conjuring. King and Rumsky, maybe the Conjuring success is a sign that people are already in a Halloween mood. Maybe. Steven says, did you scream like a girl when you saw AJ Lee return back in WWE? No. I did mark out a little bit, though, because it's been like over a decade, and she was a very good performer. Like, she was actually one of the few women wrestlers at the time that could actually wrestle and wasn't like the typical like diva, like the Bellas and other people that were like, they can't really wrestle much. And it's just like, so it's just annoying. But yeah, I the reason why I didn't scream like a girl is because, one, I don't do that, and also, two, it was unfortunately something that was like a very well-known secret. So it had been speculated for a very long time, and people pretty much already knew that it was going to happen. It was still surprising that it did, because they do tend to keep those things pretty close to the chest as far as like confirmation. To me, it almost reminded me a little bit about Spider-Man, right? No Way Home. Whereas like people kind of had that general knowledge, right? That Andrew Garfield was going to be in the movie and that Tobey Maguire was going to be in the movie. But it wasn't until you actually saw them where you're like, oh man, they were lying during those interviews and blah, 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 blah. So, Hardwick 822, have you ever seen Lady Hawk? If so, what are your thoughts on it? Yeah, we did like a movie watch party, I think, on that. And I wasn't a fan. I think Laura was a part of the show back at that time. And it was one where I was like, I appreciate certain elements, but it was a bit too much for me. Geek64 saying, agreed, Now You See Me was a fun movie. The second one was mid. Again, the fact that, I cannot believe almost $100 million from China for a $300 million movie. A third of its box office came from China alone, and it only got 25% of that. Gosh. The Glockener. What's up, Glockener? Hail to you. Not sure what that first part means, but 2:27 in the Netherlands. Ooh, is that like AM? Go to sleep, man. Bloody late, excuse my French. Appreciate it. Just chipped in, doing a brilliant job, my lad. Thank you, Glockener. Appreciate it. Always see you in the comments section, of course. Says internationally, we have taste. You are into tight trousers and capes. We are into other stuff. Glockener, that would also mean Now You See Me too. You sure you want to make that claim, brother? I don't think you do. The Morak, thanks for becoming a member at the Army of Asgard level. Appreciate you, good sir. Thank you. Wendy Hunter, there has to be a conspiracy. Yeah, seriously. It's insane. It is insane. Let's see. Geek64 saying, this month is the biggest physical media drop of the year. Crazy stuff dropping and so many pre-orders sold out. Yeah, dude, seriously. I have your video on my to watch list because I want to find out all the information of all the things coming out. Yeah, it's always sad too when I hate how they do these pre-orders now and how so many of these scalpers can somehow get access. There has to be like a simpler way for them to do it. Right, there has to be a simpler way for them to be able to ensure that they can still make their money, they can still make their profits, but that people that are actual collectors can get access to these things still. Just remember to put @Odin at the very beginning of the comment, @Odin, just the @ symbol Odin at the beginning of your comments. Let you know you're trying to get my attention. No, we're talking American football. We're talking about real football. No, we're talking about American football. Which is honestly confusing because it's like American football to a foreigner would be soccer, right? But by American football, we just mean American football, or as we would call it, football. Glackener seems to explain things. Main problem, I type in OMB, have been subscribed for eons, and it will never show up. So you'll have to type in OMB plus Odin. It's just bloody impossible for new people to find you. What? Oh, you mean like you type in Odin's movie blog, like the old channel name. Yeah, I mean, it'll probably still show up. I mean, it should still pretty much be connected there. But no, that's why you just put OMB Reviews and it shows up every time. What's even more fun is that it will also connect me to like the OMB and and connect me to like the business administration, which I find funny. Doesn't see. Your new intro should be, "Hey guys, it's Odin." No. It's fun to do on a stream because everyone understands it, but Hardwick, what issues did you have with Lady Hawk? Bro, it's been so long since I've seen it, I honestly don't remember. The only part that I found not to work is the musical score, and there's a fan edit that rescores it with Jerry Goldsmith music. Yeah, it may have been that. It may have also have just been like some of the effects too. It's been a long time. I watched it once, did not really feel like it was worth seeing. And again, you can enjoy the film. I'm not saying the film is objectively bad. I'm just telling you that my subjective experience was not very good. Xboot saying, did you like The Office American version? There's a new series spinoff on Peacock called The Paper, and it is pretty good. I would say that as good as The Office, though. What are they spinning off? What characters? I'm curious. I like the memes from The Office. I never actually watched the show, to be honest. The Moraku member saying, how have the nominations for the Raven Awards been going with the new form? It's been going well as far as not having to worry about spammers, as far as like the bots, right? The bots were really, really bad using the Google Forms, unfortunately. So having the password protection, I think, helps. But there's definitely, it seems like a couple people that are very consistent. Like, look, I don't know who keeps nominating Greg Alba from The Real Rejects, but there's someone out there, maybe you're even watching the stream, maybe you're commenting, I don't know, but someone is like, has it out for Greg Alba, because it's like, I've got 10 nominations and it's clearly from the same person every time, because it's perfectly spelled, it's got the same dash mark, and they also typically will nominate Chris Gore too. So I don't know what the issue is. But then recently they switched it up and then put Greg Alba for The Real Rejects. I don't even know who that is, to be honest, because I don't follow the Real Rejects. And then decided to put in another nomination for someone else. So I'll go ahead and share that right now, because it's like, who keeps doing this? Like, just put it in once, okay? You don't have to put it in several times, all right? Please stop trying to to force the hand of everybody. If you're watching this show, please stop. please find some new nominations out there. I'm sure there's more. Glockener saying, "Oh, it's with a shotgun. Last Rutger Hauer movie ever. Please don't read everything, my friend. Just let me ramble." Ah, gotcha. Is that really the last film he ever did? That's crazy. Geek64 saying, the scalpers, high prices, and low print runs are destroying the steelbook collecting. Seriously. And yeah, I mean, scalpers are a bad part of it, but the studios are just as bad. Yeah, because they do very much have these low print runs. And you're seeing some attempts, or at least maybe like the last couple of years, there's been those reprints on Amazon, especially of like the limited, which is always so weird. It's like limited edition, but we're going to have this reprint, and the reprint's going to be forever. It's like, why not just make a large amount of them available? You'll make a lot more money. And then over time, you can reduce the price and still make money off of it. It doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like a problem. Rob D saying, there's going to be a movie on the China box office conspiracy. It will be called The Critic Who is a Cynic and Who Knew Too Much. Yeah, seriously. Wait, so China faked its numbers for years to gain the trust of Hollywood, only to stab them in the back after releasing a virus. And You just keep going and going and going, keep unraveling it. You're just like, oh, there's so many layers here. And who do you find at the very top of the food chain? It's Dr. Anthony Fauci. It was all a part of his plan all along to destroy the movie theaters of the United States. Because when I was a kid, I went to the theater and they did not have popcorn. And ever since then, I have desired to destroy them. And so I devised this brilliant plan. I don't know why that's how Anthony Fauci sounds in my head. But, oh man, someone make that a short animated movie of Anthony Fauci not getting his butter on popcorn when he's a kid. So he has this whole conspiracy that he sets up to become the head of like the CDC, everything else, just so that he can destroy the American movie theater by faking numbers from China and then releasing a virus. Wendy Under, I have to go. I hope you and everyone else has a nice evening. You too, Wendy. You too. Harvick saying, do you think there's a chance that the rescored version could change your view of Lady Hawk? From my memory, it was not just the score. Hardwick. Like, we're talking anything that's like pre-Criticless days. I have a very difficult time remembering. I don't know if I even ever transfer. Yeah, I gave it a 59% decent score. Yeah, it was an old review. Okay, yeah. So, whether you like this or not, I put solid acting and a compelling story. Lady Hawk struggles with a clash of genres and styles, especially with the 1980s score, which is solid, set to an odd medieval backdrop. So, yeah, the score, I didn't dislike the score. It was just it up against its backdrop of the movie was a problem. And I had a bigger issue with the genres specifically clashing. So again, it's been a long time. That was, I think, one of the films I had initially reviewed over on Letterboxd. And so I wasn't able to like pinpoint everything like I have been doing with newer films. I have a whole movie review. I have a whole retro review of Lady Hawk. So please feel free to watch that. That was filmed 4 years ago. So I haven't seen the film then in over 4 years. And I saw it one time. And clearly it did not make a good impression on me. But I gave it a 59% decent score. So take that for what it is. Myra gets, I checked out the Prime Video series Countdown. I enjoyed it for the most part. It has a really good cast and pretty good story. It ended on a frustrating cliffhanger with no idea if it'll get a renewal. Oh, I don't know if I want to see that then. Gandalf the Fat. Sorry. Just caught me off guard. Jurassic World Rebirth is pretty much done domestically, but still going internationally. Do you think it will finish its run at 870 or around 865? Pretty good when it didn't have an IMAX release. I'm pretty sure I thought it did get some showings there. It didn't get like a full slate, but it did get some. At least got premium format screens for a bit, because I do remember it being released in some premium form. It like split screens, I think, down the stretch from some other films' releases because of how well it was doing. So again, hard to say. Let me go ahead and pull up the numbers real quick, because yeah, it's essentially done domestically. It's still made $500,000 this past weekend. It's only at 500. Wait a minute. That's the theater change. Number of theaters. Let's see. So it's still at 819 screens. That's not terrible. Again, 10 weeks out from its initial release. So it's at 860 right now. Yeah, I would have to see. I don't remember what it was last weekend as far as its international. So yeah, I could see 865 to 870. That seems to make sense to me. I mean, if it's still making $500,000 in a weekend here domestically, I don't see why it couldn't do something similar. It's even crazier when you realize that the film actually had a pretty good domestic run too. Right, the international is where it all came in, and the international is a lot less than where the previous films were. Right, it's the first Jurassic World film not to hit $1 billion, but the domestic is actually so much more impressive. It did so much better than it had any right to do by that very fact. But anyway, let me. I was gonna look for one more thing because it's gotten released pretty much everywhere. It's made $25 million in Japan. So that's about what you could expect, and it has no other release dates. So, and it's been in there since beginning of August, right? So yeah, it looks like it's pretty much done internationally too, based off of those numbers here. The most recent updates in the chart listed there was Finland, which is small potatoes. Italy was on the second of. Netherlands, New Zealand still reporting in some numbers. So not much. But yeah, based off of that and $500,000 domestic, yeah, I could see it getting upwards of maybe 865. It's possible. Myra got saying Jurassic World Rebirth that had Dolby Cinema screens, but no IMAX. F1, then Superman had the IMAX ones. Okay. But again, even when that happens, there are oftentimes situations where it does get like a couple IMAX screens, which isn't much. Justin C., I don't know why I sometimes confuse Lady Hawk with Labyrinth, another 80s film. Interesting. Yeah, Labyrinth is a phenomenal movie. I love Labyrinth. That's a classic. Lady Hawk is no Labyrinth. I'm sorry. Especially because the score, I like the score of Lady Hawk, but it's nothing compared to David Bowie. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. Anyway, that's going to be it for me, everybody, as the chat looks like it has caught up and a little slow on the evening, and that's okay because we had fun here tonight, everybody. We talked about a lot of things tonight. We especially talked... Oh, actually, you know what? Before we head out, let me give some quick thoughts because I did have shows in the title. Obviously, we went on some rants there. That Now You See Me rant, I tell you, that's crazy. $100 million for Now You See Me 2 from China. What world are we living in where that's actually a thing? I can't believe that. I cannot believe that. So let's see. The shows that I've been watching. Let's see. Wednesday. Season 2 is done. Really not anywhere close to being as fun as Season 1 was. Even Season 1 wasn't perfect, especially some of the effects. I think the effects were actually better in Season 2, especially that of the hide. I think the hide effects were a lot better this season than they were last season. But there was just a little bit... It tried to do way too much. There's a twist about Thing that I actually hated because it gives information that I did not want. And I don't think anyone really wanted. And it just brings up way too many questions, and it's very it's something where I'm like, no, I really didn't need that. I really didn't want that. If you've seen the show, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's like, no, I don't really need to know that about Thing. I don't want to know that. No, thank you. So I guess I'd give it like a C, maybe like a C minus. So, it still had some fun stuff to it. My wife, it's a fun show to watch with a spouse, and so I had fun watching it with my wife, of course. But it's nothing too special. It's fine. It's like a low decent score, I think. So C minus. Peacemaker is still just an F. The show's awful. The first episode alone, I don't think anyone should ever watch. Especially if you're younger. That whole sequence of depravity, just all of the unnecessary nudity, everything about that scene is just so disgusting. I can't recommend it. That alone makes it unrecommendable to me. So it's not gotten any better. I mean, obviously, it's not gotten as worse as that moment was. And there's been moments of shining, like a sunshine kind of, I guess. Maybe. No. It's a bad show. And the way in which they've described how the whole portal in his room works, too, is just so convoluted. And it's perfect for what James Gunn does, right? He loves to do these convoluted things that don't make any sense and just makes things up as they go. It's awful, right? So Peacemaker's awful. Alien Earth, man, that show could be great. I actually really liked the most recent episode because it's a flashback to them being on the ship with these aliens. And there's some things in there that are really bad because it's like they're doing way too much with the aliens. They are showing a knowledge of aliens that really calls into question the intelligence of everything that's supposed to happen post-Alien Earth, which would include some of the big alien movies, for instance. And that, I have an issue with, because wait a minute, how did they have all of this knowledge and they were doing all this research and study, and yet there's no connection? Like, a lot of the same companies that are involved. I'm sure they'll try and tie it in to explain, like, oh, these were different companies that were doing these trials and they hid the information from their competitors because they wanted their competitors to fail. But then it just makes it a stupid plot point. And you're like, why? So, some of the aliens that they're, showing there that are not just the mainline aliens, right, are kind of cool, but ultimately forgettable. The concept of them putting children into adult bodies is just creepy as all get out, and it's never a good idea, especially in modern Hollywood, to do that. So it's a show that's really, I can't really get into it, to be honest. Oh, man. I'm trying to think about what else. And then South Park. We talked about South Park earlier. South Park is just, looks like they got TDS, man. There's just no other way around it, man. Let's see. Justin C says, good night. Forever Sci-Fi says, good night. Glackener says, hey, I love a series. A trillion aeons later. Hey, this is season 2. I used to be a little lad. Now I'm an old geezer. Geek64, never cared to watch Peacemaker. Thought it was strange he had a cameo in the Superman movie. Agreed. But it makes more sense when you remember it's James Gunn. The Climber Bros saying here, how's it going? To be honest, Peacemaker isn't peak. I think The Flash's CW was on top. It started off, the original start of The Flash on CW. Most of the Arrowverse stuff, when it first started, was pretty good. The only exception, I think, would be Supergirl. Supergirl just was never great. The first season is infinitely better than the crap they do after. But, the original Arrow, like the first few seasons of Arrow was great. First few seasons of The Flash were great. And then most of them just went on way too long and just went in directions that they really shouldn't have. Glackener, it's never too late, man. It is never too late. You can say, oh, it is for me. No, it's never too late. I'll be praying for you, man. Then after saying, James Gunn is the reason I'm not watching anything from DC. I dislike his style, and I don't blame you. Anyway, that is going to officially be it for me tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all very much for watching. Please make sure you smash that like button. Smash that rumble button as well. You guys have been amazing, beautiful people. I still need to make a September video. Still need to make a September shoutouts video. As you all know, when the school year gets a-rockin', it gets harder to to get the time to do this, especially with the young kids. So I will do the very best that I can to get the September shoutouts as soon as I can. There haven't been too many changes, but obviously I always want to make sure to get that updated, so at least get the YouTube members, because that does change from time to time. So again, thank you to all the YouTube members. Thank you for everyone's love and support. I love you guys. Geek Truth saying, I have season 1 and 2 of Arrow and the same for Flash. No interest in the rest. I don't blame you. Climber Bros, I agree. It was hard to watch after season 4 of The Flash, and Arrow was good overall. Yeah, just a lot of them just fall off just a bit too much. Stonewolf, Night Love the live streams. Thank you, Stonewolf. Appreciate it. Mr. Roy, Chosen of Valhalla. Thank you very much, Mr. Roy. Appreciate you. Anyway, you guys are amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, a blessed Monday, and also a blessed feast of the birth of the Virgin Mary, right? This is Mary's birthday, so happy birthday to Mary. Wonderful feast in the church, and a wonderful week for the church as well, as far as our feast are concerned. We've got the feast of Our Lady's birthday, St. Peter Claver tomorrow, St. Nicholas of Tolentino after that, a Feria Day, and then the Most Holy Name of Mary on Friday. So hope you have a blessed week, blessed Friday, blessed birthday of Mary, and as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off first with my people on Patreon, Father Luca Illich and Miss Martin Muses. Check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Miss Martin Muses. Also to my Subscribestar people, Matt317. Check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Matt317. And lastly to my YouTube member, Mr. Roy. Shout out to you, good sir. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, check out the top link in the video description below where you get access to that. Also, you get access to a plethora of other things. You get your name listed at the end of every live stream and video, like you saw in those names that came up before this video started. And also access to a giveaways channel that I host over on the Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Steelbooks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff. So check that out if you're interested in that. Also, I have an exclusive podcast that I hold at least once a month, and it's always a good time, and you get extra bonus content with that also. So if any of that sounds interesting, again, check out that top link in the video description below. You guys are all amazing, and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless. And Odin coming back in at the very end here, because I realized that I made a boo-boo, and I always try to do everything I can to make sure that I get to these comments, and I'm sorry that I skipped over some comments. I think it jumped on me, and so that's why I didn't see them. But Luke Zilla, thank you for stopping by, dude. Luke Zilla, appreciate you being here. Kevin, Kincaid Rumsky saying Fauci should totally be a Vatman villain. Agreed. Morak had to run. Talking sports ball in a bit. Thanks for the stream. Appreciate you. Justin C. Fauci should be played by Harvey Fierstein. Oh, goodness. I would destroy my voice if I try to do a Harvey Fierstein. That is such a hard voice to do. Geek Truth saying, I like Blaine, but his review of Jaws on Criticalist was wild. Dude, Blaine just canceled himself. His review on, you're right, it was wild. I love Blaine too. I love him like a brother, but oh my goodness, one of the worst takes on movies I've ever seen in my entire life. Hardwick saying the Lady Hawk score is infamous for how poorly it fits the movie, but other than that, the movie is great. The rescored version is excellent. Good to know. King of Ramsky then said, Suicide Squad is my Lady Hawk. I cannot remember one thing that happened in it. I would also agree with that as well. And I think that was it for the comments. So if you stuck by this long, you got a little bit of extra stuff here. So again, thank y'all for y'all's comments. I love you guys. God bless.